The sound of the train station still rings in my head, that metallic screech of brakes, the murmur of travelers, and the faint smell of diesel mixed with coffee. It was supposed to be an ordinary day. Just me, my suitcase, and another journey to clear my mind. But that day became something I'll never forget. The day my aunt decided to humiliate me in front of half our family. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. I was standing near platform 4, checking the time, when I heard her voice behind me, sharp, confident, echoing with that familiar arrogance I'd grown up around. Well, if it isn't Amelia, Aunt Margaret said, her lips curling into a smile that wasn't really a smile. Still taking the cheap seats, huh? Her voice carried farther than she probably intended, because soon enough, her daughters, Rebecca and Olivia, turned around, laughing like it was a comedy show. Guess success doesn't look good on everyone, Rebecca said. Olivia added, didn't she say she quit her job to start some kind of magazine or blog? What was it called again? Oh, right, Nomad's Muse. How poetic. They all laughed, and people passing by actually turned to look. I just stood there, silent. Not because I was weak, but because I'd learned something long ago. Silence cuts deeper than words when people expect you to beg for respect. I smiled faintly. Good to see you too, I said, dragging my suitcase closer to my side. Aunt Margaret tilted her head. You know, Amelia, some of us worry about you. You're not getting any younger, and all this chasing dreams nonsense won't keep you afloat forever. You should have stayed at that office job. At least it was stable. My hands tightened around the handle. For a split second, that old ache inside me, the one built from years of being dismissed, underestimated, and patronized, threatened to break through. But I just nodded. Maybe you're right, I said quietly. But stability never made me happy. Rebecca snorted. Yeah, well, neither does being broke. I turned my head slightly, meeting her smug eyes. I didn't say it out loud, but I remembered something my dad once told me before he passed. Don't fight to prove your worth. Just live it loud enough that they choke on the silence. Then it happened, the moment that changed everything. A tall conductor, maybe mid-50s, in a dark navy uniform with gold trim, approached our group. His shoes clicked against the polished floor as he stopped right in front of me. He took off his cap and gave a polite bow. Miss Ward, he asked, his tone formal but warm. I blinked, a little confused. Yes, that's me. Your royal cabin is ready, he said. We've arranged refreshments inside, and the attendant will take care of your luggage. May I escort you? I swear you could have heard a pin drop. My aunt's smile froze. Rebecca's jaw actually fell open. Olivia stopped mid-sentence. Aunt Margaret stuttered. Our royal cabin? There must be some mistake. She can't possibly. The conductor turned to her politely. No mistake, ma'am. Miss Amelia Ward booked the exclusive royal cabin through the partnership with Nomad's Muse. She's expected aboard immediately. My heart pounded, not from pride, but from that surreal moment when life suddenly decides to repay every ounce of humiliation you've endured. I looked at my aunt, whose face had turned the same shade as her lipstick, pale red and trembling. I smiled. Well, looks like my cheap seat got an upgrade. The attendants came forward and gently lifted my single suitcase onto a polished luggage cart. The sight must have stung even more. They all traveled with designer luggage, yet there I was, with one scuffed suitcase, being escorted like someone important. Rebecca whispered, You're kidding. How? How did you afford that? I glanced over my shoulder. Hard work. The kind that doesn't come with family approval. And then I walked away. Every step felt heavy and light at the same time, like years of mockery were finally crumbling behind me. The whispers from my relatives faded as the conductor led me toward the far end of the train, where a gleaming blue and gold carriage waited. It looked unreal. Elegant windows, velvet drapes, soft golden light spilling from within. The conductor opened the door with a respectful nod. Welcome aboard, Miss Ward. I stepped inside. The air smelled faintly of cedar and champagne. The seats were deep, cream-colored leather, and the space looked more like a private hotel suite than a train. I took a slow breath, trying not to let the tears in my throat win. As the train began to move, I caught a glimpse of them on the platform. My aunt, cousins, all frozen in disbelief. It wasn't anger I felt anymore, just peace. 3 years ago, they laughed when I quit my corporate job to start Nomad's Muse, an online travel magazine. They told me I'd fail. I did, at first, multiple times. I slept on a couch for months, worked 16-hour days, lived on coffee and doubt. But I kept going. And a year ago, one of my stories about traveling on a budget with Seoul went viral. It caught the attention of a luxury train company that partnered with me for a feature article. So no, it wasn't luck. It was every sleepless night, every time I walked away instead of begging for validation. The train picked up speed. I rested my head against the window, watching the scenery blur past. The reflection looking back at me wasn't the timid girl they once laughed at. It was someone who had built her own ticket, one no one else could buy. I thought I'd left them behind. I really did. But fate, as always, had a wicked sense of humor. Not 20 minutes after departure, the door to my royal cabin clicked open, and there she was. Aunt Margaret. Her pearl earrings trembled with every breath she took. Her composure cracked like old paint. Behind her stood Rebecca and Olivia, pretending to look curious instead of humiliated. "Oh, Amelia," Aunt Margaret said, forcing a smile so tight it could have cut glass. "We didn't realize this was your cabin. The staff said we could tour the train's luxury section." The lie was obvious, but I didn't call her out. I just gestured to the seats across from me. "Sure," I said. "You've always liked looking around at things that don't belong to you." Her eyes narrowed for half a second before she fake laughed. "You've gotten bold," she said softly, trying to regain her upper hand. "I suppose success changes people." I leaned back, folding my arms. "No, Aunt. Failure does. It either breaks you or it builds you." The words hung in the air. Rebecca shifted awkwardly, eyes darting around the cabin. "Wow, this place is incredible," she said, trying to sound casual. "So, are you working for the company or something?" "I'm writing about it," I said. "They partnered with my magazine." Olivia frowned. "Your magazine? You mean that little travel blog?" I smiled slowly. "That little blog pays more in a month than your fiancé's dealership makes in a year." That shut her up. Aunt Margaret's smile twitched, her voice turning sweet but venomous. "Oh, darling, no need to exaggerate. We all know how hard life can be when you don't have a safety net." I stared at her for a long moment. "You're right," I said quietly. "I didn't have one. You made sure of that when you convinced my parents to stop helping me. You called me a lost cause. Remember?" The fake politeness drained from her face. The train hummed around us, the sound of the wheels against the rails filling the silence. Margaret opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time in years, she looked small, human. I continued, my voice steady but low. "You taught me that no one's coming to save you, that if you want to stand tall, you build your own ground. So yes, I failed again and again. But every failure was a brick. And now I'm standing on something you can't tear down." The cabin fell silent. Even Rebecca and Olivia couldn't look me in the eye. Outside, the train cut through green fields bathed in sunlight, calm, steady, unstoppable. Then Aunt Margaret whispered, "You know, I didn't mean to hurt you. I just wanted you to make better choices." I nodded slowly. I believe that. But sometimes people disguise cruelty as advice. You wanted me to stay small so you could keep feeling big. For once, she didn't have a comeback. The conductor appeared at the door, knocking gently. "Miss Ward, lunch is being served in the first-class dining carriage. Would you like me to escort your guests as well?" I smiled politely. "No, thank you. They'll be returning to their section." He nodded and stepped aside. I stood, straightened my jacket, and picked up my tablet. "Enjoy the rest of your ride," I said softly, walking past them. As I entered the dining carriage, I caught my reflection in the window, composed, calm, unshakable. They'd tried to bury me years ago. They didn't realize I was a seed. The dining car shimmered with soft golden light and the gentle rhythm of the moving train. Crystal glasses clinked softly as the waiters glided by with silver trays. I sat near the window, the world flashing past in streaks of green and gold, the quiet hum of success pulsing beneath the surface of my calm. I had just taken a sip of coffee when I saw her reflection in the glass, Aunt Margaret, hovering a few tables behind me. Her perfect posture was gone. She looked smaller, hesitant. I sighed quietly. Part of me wanted to ignore her, but something in me knew this wasn't over. She walked closer, clutching her designer purse like it was a lifeline. "May I?" she asked softly, her voice lacking its usual edge. I nodded slowly. "Go ahead." She sat across from me, folding her trembling hands on the table. For the first time, she wasn't wearing her armor of arrogance. Her lipstick had faded, her eyes tired. "I owe you an apology," she said, barely meeting my eyes. "I was hard on you because I didn't understand you. I thought you were throwing your life away." Her voice cracked at the last word. The rawness startled me. I had waited years for this, but hearing it didn't feel as satisfying as I thought it would. It just felt heavy. I stayed silent. She took that as permission to continue. "When your uncle left us," she said, I panicked. "I wanted to make sure my girls never struggled like I did. And when you quit your job, it scared me. You reminded me of myself before I became bitter." Her words hit like quiet thunder. I leaned back. "You could have supported me instead of tearing me down," I said quietly. She nodded. "I know. I thought cruelty was a shortcut to strength. I was wrong." Her eyes shimmered, and for a moment, she looked like a different person. Someone who finally saw the weight of her own mistakes. I exhaled slowly. "You humiliated me, Aunt Margaret. You made me feel like I'd never be enough. But you also gave me something I didn't expect, fuel. Every insult, every laugh, every backhanded comment pushed me harder. You made me tougher." Her lips trembled. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." I shook my head gently. "Maybe not yet, but you deserve peace. We both do." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It was real, unfiltered, human. Then she said something I never expected. "Rebecca and Olivia, they've been struggling. They see what you've become, and it's opened their eyes. Maybe you could talk to them." I hesitated, then nodded. "Maybe someday, but not today." The waiter arrived, breaking the tension. "Miss Ward, your meal is served," he said, setting down a beautifully plated dish. Aunt Margaret looked at it. Fine china, perfectly folded napkin, all symbols of the luxury she once used to measure worth, and her face softened. "I always thought success looked like this," she said quietly. "But you showed me it can look like strength." I smiled faintly. "It can look like peace too." She nodded, stood up slowly, and said, "I'm proud of you, Amelia." Those 5 words, ones I'd never thought I'd hear, landed heavier than all her past insults combined. When she walked away, I sat there for a moment, letting it sink in. Not the apology, not the validation, but the realization that I had changed, not to prove her wrong, but to prove myself right. Outside, the world sped by. I watched the sunlight flicker across the glass, the landscape shifting like the chapters of a book finally closing. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel angry. I just felt free. When the train finally slowed, the sunset painted the horizon in gold and amber streaks. The announcement crackled through the speakers. "Next stop, Silvergate Station." My stop. I gathered my bag and stood by the window for a moment, watching the reflection of the woman I'd become, calm, self-assured, no longer afraid of being underestimated. The platform came into view, lined with people waiting for passengers to step out. But what caught me off guard was the small crowd near the front, holding cameras and banners with my magazine's logo, Nomad's Muse. My heart stilled. The company had arranged a small media event for my feature piece. They wanted photos, interviews, and coverage for their luxury train experience. I hadn't expected this many people, though. As I stepped off, flashes went off instantly. Reporters moved closer. Miss Ward, over here. Can you tell us what inspired Nomad's muse? How does it feel to partner with one of the most exclusive rail lines in the country? I smiled, answering calmly, it feels like the journey was worth every mile. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw them, Aunt Margaret, Rebecca, and Olivia, stepping off the regular cabin a few cars down. They froze when they saw the crowd around me. Rebecca's face turned pale. Olivia looked like she was trying to process what was happening. And Margaret, she just stood there, clutching her purse, eyes wide with disbelief. A journalist turned toward them, curious. Are those your family members, Miss Ward? I looked over. My heart thudded once. I could have denied it. I could have walked away and left them standing in that shadow of regret. But something inside me shifted. I wasn't the girl they'd mocked anymore. I didn't need revenge. I needed grace. Yes, I said softly. That's my family. The cameras swung toward them. Aunt Margaret looked stunned, unsure whether to smile or disappear. I walked over, heels clicking against the platform. The crowd's noise dimmed behind me. When I stopped in front of her, she whispered, Amelia, I didn't know you were. I smiled. You didn't have to know. You just had to believe I could be something. Her eyes glistened, her lips trembling. I was wrong about you. I shook my head gently. No, you were wrong about yourself. You thought success only belonged to people who looked a certain way, lived a certain way. But sometimes, the ones you underestimate are the ones writing their own story. Rebecca looked down, embarrassed. Olivia avoided my gaze. I reached out and placed a hand on my aunt's shoulder. You don't have to explain anymore. Just don't tear down the next person who dares to dream. She nodded, tears finally spilling over. I won't. I turned back toward the cameras, my heart steady. The train hissed behind us, its engine quieting like an applause fading into silence. The conductor from earlier passed by and gave me a nod. It was an honor having you aboard, Miss Ward. I smiled. Thank you. You made today unforgettable. He tipped his hat before walking off. As the crowd surrounded me again, I looked once more at my family, still standing there, smaller now, not because they'd shrunk, but because I had finally grown. That day, I didn't just step off a train. I stepped out of their shadow. Later that night, back in my hotel room, I uploaded my article draft titled, From Cheap Seats to Royal Cabin, The Journey They Laughed At. And beneath it, I wrote one line that summed up everything I'd learned. Sometimes, you don't need to silence the people who doubt you. Just keep walking until the sound of your success does it for you. I closed my laptop, exhaled, and smiled. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing approval. I was living proof that I never needed it.